My name is Matilda Shaw, though back then I was just Tilly Hayes, a scared 20-year-old girl from Harmony Creek, Tennessee. It was 1966 when my whole world flipped upside down, and if you'd told me then that I'd be sitting here at 77 telling this story with a smile on my face, I'd have thought you were crazy. But life has a funny way of turning the worst chapters into the ones that save you. I was sold to a 45-year-old stranger for $2,000. There, I said it plain. My own daddy, Walter Hayes, took money from Arthur Shaw to hand me over like I was livestock. People don't like that word, sold, but that's what it was. Hunger makes folks do desperate things, and we were hungry. A drought had killed the crops, the cattle were dying, and my daddy's job on Mr. Vance's farm vanished overnight. We went days eating little more than sugar water. My 5 older brothers were out looking for any work they could find. Mama was sewing until her fingers bled, and still the pantry stayed empty. One Thursday, a truck pulled up outside our little wooden house. I was hanging laundry when I heard low voices inside. Then Daddy called me in. His face was gray, his eyes couldn't meet mine. He told me to sit, said an opportunity had come up. A man wanted to marry me. That man was Arthur Shaw, the quiet, wealthy farmer who lived alone on the big brick house 3 miles out of town. 45 years old, never married, the subject of every whisper at the market and every sideways glance at church. I tried to argue, I begged, I asked if I could work, take in sewing, wash clothes, anything but this. Daddy's pride wouldn't hear it. A decent girl doesn't work outside the home, he said, like we weren't already starving. In the end, he told me he'd given his word, and the wedding was set for 9 days later. $2,000 was more money than our family had seen in years. It would keep food on the table, pay debts, give my brothers a chance to get on their feet, and all it cost was me. I spent those 9 days in a fog. Mama helped me into the satin dress Arthur sent over. Beautiful, expensive, the kind of thing I'd never owned. She cried the whole time she pinned the veil. My brothers wouldn't look at me. At the church, the place was packed, not because folks loved us, but because they wanted to see the poor Hayes girl marry the strange rich man twice her age. I walked down the aisle on Daddy's arm, feeling like I was heading to my own grave. Arthur was waiting at the altar. Tall, broad-shouldered, gray starting at his temples, dressed in a dark suit that fit him perfect. He was handsome in a serious way, but his eyes were nervous, almost scared. We said the words, exchanged rings. He gave me the gentlest, briefest kiss. Then it was done. I belonged to him now. The ride to his farm was silent. I stared out the truck window at the dark fields rushing by, wondering what kind of hell waited for me. Everybody in town figured Arthur had dark reasons for staying single so long. Some said he was mean, others said he was sick. A few whispered worse things. I braced myself for cruelty, for demands, for a life of being used and discarded. I was ready to disappear inside myself and just survive. But that first night, nothing happened the way I feared. Arthur showed me the house, big, clean, comfortable in a way I'd never known. The housekeeper, Mrs. Davis, welcomed me like I was already the lady of the place. Then Arthur stopped outside the bedroom door, looking like he might be sick. "Matilda," he said, voice shaking, "I need to tell you something before anything else." I sat on the edge of the big bed, hands clenched in my lap, waiting for whatever awful truth was coming. He couldn't look at me. He stared out the window instead, told me he'd never married because he was born different, real different. His private parts, he said, were tiny, barely developed like a little boy's. He'd been ashamed his whole life, never let a woman see him, never risked the humiliation. He told me straight out that he couldn't perform like a normal husband, couldn't give me children the usual way, couldn't satisfy a wife in bed. I just sat there, stunned. All the terror I'd carried about what a husband would demand on our wedding night drained out of me like water from a bucket. I didn't feel desire. I'd never been allowed close enough to any boy to even know what desire felt like. But I did feel something I hadn't expected: relief. He kept talking, voice cracking, said he'd married me because he was lonely, because he wanted company, someone to share meals with, talk to in the evenings, grow old beside. He didn't expect passion. He paid the money so my family wouldn't starve, and in return, he hoped I'd stay and be his friend, his partner. He promised he'd never force anything on me, said the choice was mine. For the first time in my whole life, somebody was giving me a choice. I asked for time to think. He slept in the guest room that night and for weeks after. We lived like polite strangers in the same big house. Meals were quiet. I stayed in my room a lot, reading books from his library, Dickens, Jane Austen, anything to escape into another world. Then one night, about a month in, I heard a crash. Found Arthur at the bottom of the stairs, leg broken, burning up with fever. Something in me snapped awake. I took charge, sent Mrs. Davis for the doctor, sat up nights cooling his forehead, spooning broth into him, changing bandages. For 2 weeks, I barely left his side. When the fever finally broke, he looked at me like I was some kind of miracle. "You stayed," he whispered. "Of course I stayed," I said. "I'm your wife." That was the beginning of the real marriage. Once he was healing, he asked me to bring him the farm ledgers. Said if I was going to read all day, I might as well learn something useful. So he taught me how to keep books, track cattle sales, plan crop rotations, negotiate with buyers. I soaked it up like dry ground drinking rain. For the first time, I felt my mind stretch, grow, matter. Daddy had kept me locked up my whole childhood to protect my purity. Arthur, the man who technically bought me, was the one who set me free. We never had a traditional physical marriage. We shared a bed eventually, but it was for warmth and closeness, not passion. We held hands on the porch swing. He kissed my forehead when I had a hard day. We talked for hours about everything: books, the farm, dreams we'd never dared say out loud before. Respect grew between us, deep and steady. Then affection. Then love. The quiet, lasting kind that doesn't make the movies, but keeps you warm for a lifetime. A year in, we decided to adopt. First came Ella Grace, a shy 7-year-old from an orphanage in Nashville who reminded me so much of myself, scared, watchful, waiting for the worst. When I knelt down and told her we weren't there to pick a child, but to see if she'd choose us, she stepped forward and took my hand. That moment healed something broken inside me. Later came Liam and little Mia, our house filled with laughter, spilled milk, bedtime stories, and the chaos of family. The town gossiped at first, couldn't have their own, taken in strays, but we stopped caring what folks thought. We had what mattered. Arthur taught our boys that a man's worth isn't in his body, but in his character. I taught our girls they were nobody's property, that their minds and hearts were their own. All three grew up strong, kind, and sure of their place in the world.
The farm prospered. I turned out to have a real head for business, better than Arthur's, sometimes he'd laugh. We expanded the cattle operation, bought more land, built a bigger porch where we sat every evening watching sunsets. People in town started calling me Mrs. Shaw with respect in their voices, asking my opinion on community matters. I went from the quiet, controlled Hayes girl to a woman who ran one of the biggest spreads in the county. Arthur passed in 2013 at 91, peaceful in our bed, holding my hand. His last words were, "Thank you for making my life worthwhile." I told him, "Thank you for teaching me what real love looks like." Today I'm 77, still on the same farm. Our 3 kids gave us 11 grandbabies who run wild through the same fields I once only watched from a window. They know the whole story. How Grandma was sold for $2,000, how Grandpa carried a secret shame, how we built something beautiful anyway. They ask questions wide-eyed, and I tell 'em the truth. Passion fades, butterflies die, but respect and partnership and chosen love, those things endure. Sometimes young women come to me now, ones facing pressure from family or stuck in situations they didn't choose. I tell 'em what I learned the hard way. Don't give up before the story's over. What looks like the end of the world might just be the door to the life you were meant to live. If I could go back and talk to that terrified 20-year-old bride, I'd wrap her in a hug and say, "Honey, you're about to meet the kindest man you'll ever know. He's scared too. He's gonna hand you the keys to your own cage. Take 'em, run with 'em, build something nobody else understands but that fits you perfect." Because here's the secret nobody tells you when you're young and dreaming of fairy tale romance. The greatest love stories aren't always the loud ones. Sometimes they're quiet. Sometimes they start with shame and fear and a transaction. Sometimes they're built day by day, choice by choice, on nothing flashier than respect and honesty and showing up for each other. Arthur wasn't the prince I pictured as a girl, but he was the partner I needed. And together, from the worst possible beginning, we wrote the happiest ending I could have imagined. Size doesn't matter, darling. Not the size of a man's body, not the size of your dreams at the start, not the size of the hurt you carry. What matters is the size of your heart and how wide you're willing to open it, even when life hands you the ugliest package. I opened mine, and look what I got in return.